welcome to The Bright Side. I am Pharmacist Ben, and thanks for joining us. Got lines open for you at 844-236-6010. We love hearing from you. If you have questions about health, nutrition, prescription drugs, if you want to get off your meds and get on a good nutritional supplement program, if you have a health challenge you need help with, 844-236-6010 is our number. If you just want to contribute to the conversation, we love hearing from you, 844-236-6010. We have Carolyn Cory coming up at the bottom of the hour. Carolyn is a filmmaker, and she's got a really, really interesting, educational, informative, and most of all, inspiring movie out called Superhuman. It's about, it's about our superhuman potential. It's about the invisible world. In fact, the subtitle of her movie is From the Invisible to the Visible. It's about consciousness. It's about PK, psychokinesis. It's about magic, really. It's about how the invisible world affects the visible world, how the visible world is merely an epiphenomena or an end result of the invisible world, something we talk about on this program, something that's informed my life personally since I was a kid. The power of invisibility, the power of the mind, and the power of consciousness to construct our lives. And I can think of no more appropriate subject in this corona crazy time that we're living with than to understand energy and to understand consciousness and to understand the power we have to create our own reality. This movie is not airy-fairy at all. It's hardcore science. She talks to scientists and she does a lot of experimentation. It's a super cool movie. You can rent it on Amazon. Carolyn Cory is coming up at the bottom of the hour. Her movie is called Superhuman, From the Invisible to the Visible. We'll take your calls in our next segment, 844-236-6010. If you want to purchase longevity products, head to brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com, or call 866-735-2470 for more information, 866-735-2470. Don't forget to ask about joining the Brightside Ben team. For a one-time $30 fee, you can be in business for yourself, and now is a perfect time to start a home-based business. It's always been a good time to start a home-based business, but now especially with all the economic uncertainty that's going on in the world, starting a home-based business is a great way to take control of your finances and help other people at the same time, help yourself and help other folks at the same time understand and leverage the power of nutrition and nutritional supplementation. Call 866-735-2470 or click on the Join the Team link at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. And please check out our Truth Skin Health products at truthtreatments.com. And don't forget to take a look at our almost 900, actually a little over 900 4- and 5-star reviews at truthreviewed.com. Some of these reviews are absolutely mind-blowing. Truthreviewed.com, truthreviewed.com. All right, so we have been talking about the distinction between fats and water, fat solubility, water solubility, hydrophilic, meaning water-loving, fat-loving is lipophilic. Fat-loving versus water-loving is a primary distinction in biochemistry, and it's a distinction that is not leveraged as often as it should be, in my humble opinion. Now, in the skincare world, it becomes really important to understand the distinction between water solubility and fat solubility because the skin is fatty. And in chemistry, we say like dissolves like. So by understanding the fatty nature of the skin, we can understand how to get things into the skin. Contrary to appearances, the skin is stratified. That means it's layered. And the good stuff, that is the viable stuff, the living stuff, is deep. If you want to have good skin via skincare products, if you want to use skincare products to change the quality and texture and health of the skin, you got to figure out a way to get the ingredients in your product, the active ingredients, to a place where they can do some work. They can't do any work on the top because the top is dead. They can't do any work until they get down to the lower levels, the viable levels, so-called squamous layer and the basal layer, which you got to use your imagination because you can't really tell by looking. So you got to use your imagination and picture layers like lasagna or baklava. The skin is layered in this fashion, and the living cells are in the bottom layers. So you got to get down to the bottom, and the way to do that, if you understand like dissolves like, and the skin is fatty, is you gotta have fatty ingredients. This is where I came up with the idea of using fat-soluble vitamin C, which I've been using for many years in our Truth Treatments feature. Also retinol, which is a fatty ingredient. And those, by the way, are the two most important ingredients for the skin. And not only to get into to get through the skin to the cells, but to get into the cells themselves, because the cell itself is fatty on the outside. Just like the skin is a fatty organ, and the skin is a membrane for the body, it's a covering for the body. The covering of a cell is called a membrane, and it 2 is fatty. And just like the fatty nature of the skin has to be taken into account if you're going to use products to have beautiful skin, the fatty nature of the cell has to be taken into account if you're going to get into the cell. This membrane, I say the magic is at the membrane, because everything that happens inside the cell is a result of the membrane reading the outside of the cell. The cell, whether it's a skin cell or a liver cell or a heart cell or a brain cell, is sitting in a soup, an ocean. Now, it's obviously not as big as an ocean, but to the cell, it might as well be an ocean because the cell is so tiny, and it's sitting in this ocean or this soup. And by the way, the makeup of this, the mineral makeup of this extracellular fluid that a cell is sitting in is similar to the mineral makeup of the ocean. But in any case, the cell is sitting in this ocean, this soup, and it's reading the soup. To simplify, and Bruce Lipton talks about this in The Biology of Belief, to simplify it, a cell is either expanding and growing and opening, or it's closing and constricting and contracting. When it's healthy, it's in an expansive mode. And when it's not healthy, when it's sick, it's in a shrunken up mode, a constricted mode. It's kind of like people. When we're happy and when we're healthy, our body is expanded. When we're freaked out or when we're sick, our body is shriveled. Same thing with a cell. A cell's like a little microcosm version of a human body. And it's the membrane that's going to determine whether that cell is going to be open and healthy or constricted and sick. Or we'll say constricted and scared, because sickness and fear go together. This is so important because it simplifies everything. What is it that determines whether that cell is going to be healthy and expansive or sick and constricted? It's what the membrane is reading in the soup. The membrane reads the soup. The soup either is toxic and induces sickness in the cell, induces fear in the cell, or the soup is nutriated and oxygenated, has all the things a cell needs, in which case the membrane says to the cell, hey, all is good in the world, you can grow, you can repair, you can make proteins, you can do your business, you can divide. Our job, if we want to have healthy cells and ultimately have a healthy body, is to make sure we got a healthy soup. I always say, all disease is cell disease, but all cell disease is the result of unhealthy soup. Of course, that unhealthy soup is derived from the blood, and this is where we have control over the makeup of the soup through what we eat, through how we breathe, and through how we move and how we relax. That's the fourfold square of health. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. Carol and Cory coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're back on the bright side. I am Pharmacist Ben, and thanks for joining us. 844-236-6010 is our number. 844-236-6010. Got all our lines open. If you have questions, comments, or success stories you'd like to share, we love hearing from you. Carol and Cory is coming up in our next segment. We're going to talk about her super inspiring movie, Superhuman, from the invisible to the visible, and we need all the inspiration we can get. I found myself going back and forth from the news to Carol. I was watching Carolyn's movie for the last couple of days. I've been watching it, and I found myself going back and forth from the news and from all the stuff that's being put out there about COVID and vaccinations and riots and government fear programs and all the things that are going on in the news that really can freak a person out. And I found myself going back and forth from the news to Carolyn's movie, and it just reminded me of how important it is to be inspired. How important it is to surround yourself with good news. Yeah, you got to find out you got to know what's going on in the world, because this is the world we live in. But it's equally important, or even probably more important, to be inspired about the beauty that's in the world, about the power that we have over our environment, the things we can do to improve the quality of our life. We'll talk to Carol and Cory about her movie Superhuman, from the invisible to the visible, in our next segment. We'll get your calls if we have calls. This segment, 844-236-6010. From the journal Cell Stem Cell Research, quote, the cell niche is much more than a set of soluble factors and cell-to-cell interactions. It is also a physical space with mechanical and chemical properties that influence a variety of intracellular events, unquote. This is what I'm talking about here. The cell is dependent on the environment that it's sitting in. And that means it's dependent on growth, it's dependent on health, or the lack of growth or the lack of health on the environment that it's sitting in. That's called the extracellular space. This extracellular space is what determines how healthy a cell will be. The interaction between the cell and the environment it's in is analogous to the interaction we have with the environment that we're in. A cell's like a miniature person, and it's analogous to a miniature person in the same way that a cell is responsive to the environment that it's in. People are responsive to the environment that they're in, and in this way, there's really no break. There's no distinction. There's no separation between us and our environment, just like there's no separation between a cell and its environment. This is why you don't need to be vaccinated. In fact, this is why you probably shouldn't be vaccinated. A vaccine puts toxins in the cell environment. Now, the idea is, oh, well, the cell will respond to the toxins by producing antitoxins, and to a certain extent that's true, but it's much more functional, much more intelligent to make sure that the extracellular space, the space that a cell is sitting in, has what it needs to do its business. The reason we're not as healthy as we should be, and the reason we're susceptible to infections, is because that extracellular space is not clean, because that extracellular space is not nutriated, because that extracellular milieu is not oxygenated, because that extracellular milieu does not have what a cell needs to do its business. And this is where we control our destiny. This is where we control our cell's destiny, for better or for worse. If we're eating McDonald's and we're smoking cigarettes and we're taking drugs and we're drinking alcohol and poisons, of course we're going to be more susceptible to disease. And if our government authorities and if our medical authorities and our government/medical authorities, that is, representatives who work for the government and for medicine, are telling us that we have to be vaccinated, or we have to stay in the house, or we have to wear masks, and not telling us or not providing us with the wherewithal we need to nutritionally supplement or to eat correctly or to make sure that we're exercising, then they don't know what they're talking about, or they've got nefarious and malevolent intent, either or both. This is the whole idea of epigenetics, by the way, because, you see, epigenetics is based on this communication from the outside to the inside. The extracellular matrix, via the membrane, communicates to the genetics. To try to change genetics, to try to hack into the genetics without first working on the extracellular matrix, and the membrane, for that matter, is fraught with danger. The genetics of a cell are supposed to be responsive to the environment. They're not supposed to be hacked into. Change the environment, you change the cell. Change the cell, you change the genetics. That's the science of epigenetics. And while we're at it, because the membrane is fatty, making sure that you're working on the fats becomes really important. We spent the last couple of days talking about the importance of vitamin D. Well, vitamin D is the quintessential membrane nutrient. This is why we say vitamin D is not really a vitamin, it's a hormone. It works at the level of the membrane. This is why vitamin D has so many different effects. In biochemistry, when one material has a lot of effects, we say it's pleiotropic, Pleiotropic. Pleiotropic means it has many effects. Vitamin D has many effects because it works at the level of the cell membrane and changes the way the cell communicates to the genetics. Vitamin D is the quintessential epigenetic factor. That's why I say it's a hormone and not a vitamin. Hormones control the genetics. Now, you can't really take vitamin D supplementally. Well, you can take it supplementally, but that's not the best way to get your vitamin D. You can get vitamin D from foods. That's not the best way to get vitamin D either. The best way to get vitamin D is the way nature intended us to get vitamin D, is via the sun, making sure you're getting out in the sun. If you can't get out in the sun, get yourself a sun lamp. That's the best way to get vitamin D. And by the way, vitamin D is not activated until it becomes transformed at the level of the liver and the level of the kidney. The intestines are probably involved to a certain extent, as are the lungs and maybe even the skin. So if you have a kidney disease or if you have liver disease, you have metabolic disease of the liver, metabolic syndrome, as they say, and diabetes and blood sugar problems are a classic sign of metabolic syndrome. Chances are pretty good you're going to have a vitamin D problem. And this is one of the reasons why people who have metabolic syndrome and blood sugar issues are more prone towards stone formation, more prone towards kidney stones, more prone towards tear duct stones. Stones, calcium stones, are the end result of poorly processed calcium, usually secondary to vitamin D problems. And this is one of the reasons why people have metabolic syndrome are more prone towards stone formation, because typically people who have metabolic syndrome are not activating their vitamin D. How do you handle that? Work on your liver. Work on your kidneys. How do you handle that? Lower your blood sugar. And guess what? It always boils down to the triangle of disease: the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and the stress management system. That's why I came up with the triangle of disease, by the way, because health can be so darn confusing. You don't know where to turn. You don't know what to do. You don't know which step to take first. Well, you take the first step first. You take the first point in the triangle of disease as the first step, and that's you work on the digestive system. Second step, you work on your blood sugar system, and the third step, you work on your stress management system. This is why probiotics are so important, by the way, and probiotics are not only important for the digestive system in terms of how we digest our food, they're especially important in terms of fat management. This is one of the underappreciated roles of a good probiotic supplement, and one of the underappreciated roles of eating fermented foods. When you have a healthy microbiome, when you have healthy gut bacteria, you'll have not just a healthy digestive system, but a healthy fat management system, and you'll be more prone to, or you'll have better absorption of your fat-soluble nutrients, particularly vitamin D. And there is actually an extremely important relationship between the microbiome and vitamin D. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. Carolyn Cory coming up. We are back on the bright side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific, 10 to 11 Central Time, and 24/7 on the archive page at benfuchsarchives.com. Got a search engine up, and we also have maybe 9+ years of daily programs up at brightsideben.com and benfuchsarchives.com. You can purchase longevity products at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com, and True Skin Health products, all formulated in my compounding pharmacy for wound healing. Wound healing equals beauty, and that's why we have over 900 4- and 5-star reviews at truthreview.com. Never any preservatives, fragrances, fillers, waxes, emulsifiers, vegetable oil, silicone, water, nothing your skin doesn't need or doesn't want in any of our Truth Skin Health products. Check them out at truthtreatments.com, truthtreatments.com. Okay, I am really excited to have our guest on. Carolyn Cory is a movie maker and an author and a researcher and a scientist, and her movie is called Superhuman. It's about the invisible made visible, the invisible world made visible, something we talk about on the bright side all the time, and I can think of no more important time to discuss the power of consciousness and the power of the invisible world over the visible world than this corona crazy time that we're living in. Please welcome to the bright side, Carolyn Cory. Hey, Carolyn.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for being on, and thank you for your wonderful movie. I was sharing with our listeners how I was watching your movie the last couple of days, and I found myself, because I follow the news, I got to keep up with what's going on in the world, and I found myself bouncing back and forth between the news and your movie, and it dawned on me how important it is. I would go from feeling, oh my God, the world's coming to an end, and this horrible stuff, and then I would go to your movie, and I would be so inspired about the power we have over our environment and the power of consciousness to affect our physical world. Tell us how we can use these ideas in this corona crazy time to sort of inoculate ourselves against the real virus, which is the virus of consciousness, the virus of fear, we'll say. It's a consciousness virus more than it is a physical virus. And how can we use your movie to inoculate ourselves from this?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, it's so timely, because what we have right now is ourselves. That's what we can't rely, obviously, on a lot of things that we're being told, the governments or organizations in the administration, they all tell us things that instill fear in us. And then when we are in fear, we're confused. We don't know what decision to make that's best for us, that's best aligned with, our health, our highest good. And so I feel that more than ever before, this is a time where we have to focus on strengthening the power of our human mind so that we can control at least the fear. That's the first step. And then, when you do that, you can manage your physical body. You can manage your chemistry. You can manage your entire nervous system if you know how to do that. So, yeah.
It's really, that makes me think of an interesting point. It's the governments and it's the power structure and it's the authorities that are instilling the fear, but at the same time, and your movie describes this very elegantly, these power structures and governments understand the power of consciousness and in fact even use the power of consciousness for things like the military and the CIA and things like remote viewing. Can you discuss some of these ideas of how governments and how political structures and systems are using these ideas for their own advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not the entire government, but parts of the government. In fact, during the Cold War with Russia, they found out that the Russians were using psychic abilities to train the soldiers to basically spy on us. On the U.S. and do all sorts of things. And so they said, wait a minute, if that's being done on the military for military purposes, we should be doing that. And so they started a program called the Stargate program, which lasted actually about 20 years. And they poured millions of dollars in the program, training soldiers to enhance their psychic abilities so that they could spy and retrieve information remotely. That meaning, that's the remote viewing program. And so, of course, if this was not true, if this was not working, they wouldn't have spent millions of dollars and spent 20 years, doing that. And in fact, there's evidence, but all these documents have been declassified now. You can even find them online. And governments are still doing that. They're still using psychic powers for all sorts of not just spying, but also maybe interfere with actual computer systems, hacking, all things like that.
Now, when I think of the power of consciousness, nothing says how much ability we have over our world and how much ability we have over understanding our world than remote viewing. To me, that is the quintessential example of using these airy-fairy kind of spiritual, seemingly abstract ideas in a practical sense. Can you explain remote viewing, what it really is for our listeners?
Yeah, because it's evidential. That's the reason why. Because you basically have a target that you don't know anything about beforehand, and you basically retrieve the information remotely. So if somebody gives me a coordinate in Russia or somewhere else for that matter, I am able, from where I am located in the U.S., for example, to tap into that information, retrieve the information, and it could be very detailed. It is very detailed. For example, who is there, how many people, what are they doing, what type of structure it is, where are the entry points, the exit points. I mean, all sorts of detailed information remotely.
That's amazing.
So,
if you can travel 1,000 miles in your mind and actually make an accurate assessment of what a landscape, for example, is like, what does that imply?
So first of all, there's preparation involved. I mean, you can't just jump into it. Even with the most trained remote viewer, there's a little bit of preparation, how to focus your mind, quiet your mind, because there's a lot of mind chatter that interferes with the process. So you have to get yourself to this very quiet, centered space. And then there's different methodologies. The government taught it a different way. I teach it in a different way. But basically, the principle is the same, that your consciousness is non-local. It's not bound to your physical body. So your consciousness is everywhere. So once you have quieted your mind and you're starting to focus, you set your intention to focus specifically on that particular target. And you're shutting out everything else as if you are zooming in the camera. And before you know it, your higher consciousness begins to bring you that information. And And, we've tried with people, like as you saw in the movie, who have never done it before. And they were able to do it just like that. It's actually a natural process that anybody can do and learn.
I love the way you say it's a natural process. One of the things that struck me about your movie is that you began it with children. And the little kids were talking about things like energy, about what energy feels like. Do you think we kind of learn or we unlearn things that we already know as kids, and then we unlearn them as adults? And hang on, we got to take a commercial break. We can answer that when we come back. Okay. We're talking to Carol and Cory. Your movie is Superhuman, very, very inspiring movie. You can get it on Amazon and Google Play and pretty much all the streaming platforms. Carol and Cory coming up with more right after this. We are back on the bright side talking to Carolyn Cory. Her movie is Superhuman. Carolyn, do you think we're born with a certain sense of the numinous or the magical, and then we're taught to unlearn it?
Absolutely. In fact, that's what happened to me. When I was 5 years old, I would look at someone. I knew exactly what was going on with them, what was going to happen the next day. I knew what was happening on the other side of the wall. I could see things that nobody else could see. It was that's why I use the word natural, because we are all tapped into these realities, especially as children. But with time, we kind of were told, hey, there's nobody there. Stop talking to invisible friends, And so you start to think that you're doing something wrong. And so you shut off all these abilities that are really natural and come on spontaneously. In fact, when we teach children, you saw that in the movie, where we just taught a class online to children to be able to see what's blindfolded. And after 2 sessions online, usually we don't even teach it online, but because of the situation, they were able to read and do puzzles and do all kinds of stuff.
Play ping pong.
Completely blindfolded after 2 sessions, because the child, you tell them, just what color do I have in my hand? They just kind of do it. They just say it. They don't think, oh, wait, how come? It doesn't make sense. They don't think so much, of the mechanics. They just do it. It is a spontaneous ability. And so, but when it's with adults, there's all this confusion and mind chatter and belief systems, that's the problem.
So you're a futurist. Do you see a world in the future where we actually pull that out of children instead of shutting it down? We actually pull it out. We educate them, pull that out of them in the future? And what would the implications for the planet be if we started doing that?
Yeah, that's exactly the point of the movie, Ben. It's that everybody has these abilities. There are children and adults right now on the planet who can do this. And so the idea is to stop thinking that this is all woo-woo stuff, crazy stuff. This is all real stuff. And actually, this is our real power. For example, just, going back to the remote viewing real quick, how can we use this on a daily basis? Of course, we're not using it for military purposes. But, we can do these things for our daily simple things. For example, especially in our situation today. For example, you have to take a trip, but then there's the whole COVID thing going on, and then there's all these problems going on. And so you can remote view the location where you're going. You can remote view in the future, in the past. You can remote view anything on planet Earth, and beyond, by the way. And so then this gives you accuracy, gives you clarity, gives you guidance. Okay, well, this is the wrong timing, or this is going to happen in that location. And so it helps you in your daily basis. This is just a simple, example of how you can use remote viewing. You can also use the experiment that I did in the film over water, pH in water, how just focusing on the water, you're changing the chemistry of water. And this experiment has been done by other physicists, this very famous one called...
Tell the listeners about the experiment.
Yeah. So basically, there was a physicist called William Tiller. He did that experiment a while back, and basically he had a group of people focused on water, a glass of water, and they would attempt to change the pH. And we all know that a low pH is not good for your health. Viruses and bacteria love an acidic environment, and so the idea is to have an alkaline body. And so that's why you see a lot in the stores, these bottled water with 9+ pH and 8+ pH, because we know that higher pH is better for health. Viruses cannot survive that environment. And so as you're focusing your intention, your consciousness on the water molecules, you can affect them to the point where the pH starts to change. And so we redid this experiment live on camera in the movie, and we showed how this could be possible. And, of course, for those who are listening, when we do a scientific experiment, we create a baseline. We take measurements, over time, over and over and over, so we know what the parameters are. And then we know exactly the time that you are focusing on it. And then we take those measurements exactly at that time to see the difference. And then we do it again, and we do it again. So that's how we know this is scientifically done. And so, so we were able to shift the pH in water just by focusing on it. And the implication of that is crazy, because we are made of water. So if you are focusing on a bottle of water and changing its chemistry, then you can do the same to your body. And if you can maintain your body at this alkaline level, well, then the viruses cannot survive. So these what we think are woo-woo crazy stuff are real abilities that we have that can help us on a daily basis for things like that, for example.
Do you think this explains why some people get sick and other people don't, and two people can be exposed to a virus and only one person will get it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just the chemistry, it's the consciousness. It's the focus. I mean, I literally know people who, one person's sick, coughing over the other every day in a small cubicle office, and that person never gets sick. The other person just never gets sick. So of course, it's the chemistry, but what's governing the chemistry of the body is the state of your mind, the state of your consciousness. And so, yeah.
Go ahead. You want to say?
So it's not the other way around. Although once you do get sick, then that affects your state of mind, obviously, because then it depresses you or whatever. But we actually create from the invisible to the visible. We create with the mind that then affect the physical body, not the other way around.
How did they know about it?
That, yeah.
How did they know about this kind of stuff 5,000 years ago?
Exactly. I think they were more tapped into their natural abilities. When a child said, "Hey, Mom, I'm speaking to a spirit," the mother never said, "This is crazy, stop doing that." She would encourage that. And so because they were tapped into the spirit world, they were open to it. They kind of realized that they can use it to their benefit. And when you keep that door open between the visible and the invisible world, but of course you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to train yourself to align with the proper energies, with the proper information so that you can use it. And so that's the reason why, because this is part of the human DNA. This is a natural thing. And I think when people tell you this is not real, or this is woo stuff, or this is that, without even knowing, that's another thing, I think it's out of fear. It's out of fear of
the unknown?
Of the unknown, and also making you so powerful. Because then you take responsibility.
Oh.
Because if I have the power to heal myself,
or to cause cancer.
Exactly. It means that I also created the problem. It's not somebody else. It's not the environment. It's not the husband or the boyfriend or the whatever or the mother or whatever. It is me.
That's so unpolitically correct, by the way.
Exactly, right?
Are you blaming the victim? What are you doing, Carolyn? Are you blaming the victim? That's what people say.
Blaming. Yeah, no, but this is, I think, the moment where you take charge of the problem is when you have the chance to heal the problem.
That's wonderful.
Is what I think.
So you obviously went into this movie already a researcher, already a futurist, already psychic, already understanding some of these energies. Did you find yourself changed at all by doing the movie and by talking to all these people?
Yeah, I went into it because I've been in the field for 20 years doing the research, working, creating programs, writing books. So I like you said, and also working with the scientists 3 years prior. In fact, that's why I made the movie, because when we were doing the experiments, we kept getting these incredible results, and I was like, wait, we have to make a movie. This is real. This is really happening. So even though I had that confidence going in, it was fascinating. I was blown away when we would invite people who had no clue, who had never done anything like this before, and in 2 hours we would teach them how to do telekinesis, how to move an object, and they would just do it.
Carolyn, we're out of time. It's been so fascinating, but we're just out of time. Tell the listeners how they can get a hold of the movie or how they can get a hold of your work.
Yeah, just go to superhumanfilm.com, and they will see all the information there. And CarolineCory.com is the work on, healing and consciousness. But the film is superhumanfilm.com.
And it's an awesome, awesome, inspiring movie. Well done. Thank you so much for coming on The Bright Side, Carolyn, and thank you for your work. Have a great day. All right, that's Carolyn Cory. The movie is Superhuman, superhumanfilm.com, CarolynCory.com. Thanks for listening to The Bright Side. Bye for now.